Hey, what's going on YouTube? Alabama Reloader here. Today, this is just going to be kind of the last video touching on the 300 blackout load development that we did um, for this upcoming deer season. And so I think there's maybe 3 or 4 videos that I'd posted previously about the process that we went through, but I'll do a brief recap. Today I'll actually walk you through all of the targets that we shot, all the results that we got, and sort of how we settled on that particular load combination. So this is the rifle that that we're working up the load for. It is a Howa 1500 mini action and 300 blackout. And for all of the testing I had, except for the very last target that we did, which wasn't really testing, it was just zero in the scope that I just put on there. But for all the testing, the scope that was on it, it was I don't know if it's a Nico or a Nico, however you pronounce that, Nikko, Sterling. It was a 3.5 to 10 power scope, which is fine. For testing purposes, that's, I just kept it on 10 on the magnification the whole time while I was shooting groups and dialing in the load, which seemed to be okay. A little more magnification would have been nice, but 10 was adequate. But for, again, the hunting that we do, and I explained this in the other videos, but I'll just kind of lay this out here. The shots that we'll be taking with this rifle will be less than 100 yards. Maximum would be 100 yards. And that would be really stretching it, because the hunting that we do, how we hunt, we gear it more towards bow hunting. So the ranges are close. We hunt in the woods. We're not sitting on, green fields and sitting over power lines. And, we're not taking long shots. And by we, I mean me, my wife, my daughters, all that, whoever happens to go hunting. So we're not taking long shots, short range, which is why the 300 blackout supersonic loads, I feel like could be a good choice. We'll see. I mean, the load is performing on paper, but again, that doesn't always translate into real world performance, on an animal. So we'll see how that goes. But so that was the scope that was on there, swapped it out. That was for all the testing. Then for the hunting configuration, and the bipod is just on there now for just setting the rifle up on the table here. I'll just throw a little cheap sling on there whenever we get ready. It's coming in hot. Gun season will be here before you know it. So it's coming up real quick. But I went with Athlon Optics, the Talos. Yep, 1-4 optic. It's one I've had for a while. I really love it. I really like the reticle in it. Kind of focuses your eye just to the center of the reticle. Really easy, in terms of short range, quick acquisition, good eye relief, all the fun stuff. And it's cheap. That's the other thing. Or relatively speaking, it's cheap. I think I picked this up over at Mr. Big Guns in Huntsville, and I think when I bought it was like 150 bucks. I believe is what they had it listed for. 150, 159, something in that range. So not bad. For a solid 1-4 with a lifetime warranty, from Athlon, they make really good stuff. Illuminated reticle, which is also going to be useful when hunting, sort of in low light conditions and everything. So that'll be nice. But that's what I put on there, and that's what I shot the final target with, because I had to go and, obviously zero the scope to the load, and then good to go. But so that's the rifle. There you go. It is unloaded, by the way, for the people that freak out about that kind of thing. But we're going to head over here. All right. Now, if you've been following along from the start, you remember this target. So just briefly, I loaded up 3 10-shot groups, all right, using the Barnes 130 grain tipped TSX. That's the bullet that we're going with. And these are 3 different powders. okay, that we loaded up, and we loaded the max charge using these powders because I'm trying to get as much velocity as I can get with this bullet, because with it being solid copper, it has, I think Barnes was saying it has like a minimum effective velocity, impact velocity of like 1,800 feet per second. So if you go and look up some 300 blackout super data, you don't really have a whole lot of wiggle room. So that's why 100 yards is basically our cutoff. Just based on the data that I've gathered, that's where we're hitting 1,800 feet per second, is 100 yards, and I don't want to really push it beyond that due to, you know, fear of bullet performance and all that. So we are cutting it close. There probably is a better bullet selection or better bullet option out there, and we will evaluate that. So for all the people that will comment about that, so we'll do that. But I have, you know, had a bunch of these on hand. Might as well load them up and give them a shot. So the best overall grouping 10-shot group here was actually with CFE BLK or CFE Black, whatever you want to call it. Max charge, it was heavily compressed. You know, I was wanting to get over 2,000 feet per second, which that achieved, you know, average of 2040, pretty good velocity numbers. Group size wasn't terrible. And again, we were mostly shooting these groups to gather the velocity data. We were trying to narrow down what's going to be a good combination from a velocity standpoint. We have to have good SD and low extreme spread numbers. We're not shooting long range, but because of the bullet's requirement, you know, minimum velocity requirement, I can't have huge swings in velocity. You know, we're really operating on kind of a thin edge here, which again goes back to probably a better bullet out there that would provide better margin or just a better caliber in general. I hear you, but this is a fun gun to shoot. It's easy to operate, easy to handle for my wife and our children, and it's very mild recoil, so it's a good choice for them, in my opinion. So so that's CFE Black or BLK. Then we tried Heiston Little Gun. That was just garbage. We threw that one away right off the bat. Just the wide swing and velocity there, we just can't have that. So and then the last one was Ramshot Enforcer, and so our average was about the same as CFE BLK, but our charge was a little bit lower, and our overall length was much shorter, 2.1. We were big time compressed at 2.26, which is almost the mag length. I mean, there's a little more room to play with in the Howa mag, but not much. So you're almost maxed out. That's why I ended up not going with this. The performance was okay, but there's not a lot of wiggle room to really change any of the variables to see if we can do anything else about that. So I ruled that one out based on velocity numbers to sporadic, and that one doesn't leave us a lot of room on the magazine really to play around with. This one, however, 2.1, 16 grains, we weren't compressed, so we could load them a little bit longer, start tweaking our powder charge, see what we could do, and we had good velocity numbers. So that's the powder we ended up going with. I'll get back over here and show you guys the rest of the targets. So keep that in mind. We went with Ramshot Enforcer. So the first target, let's see here. I don't really know the best way to do this, but the first target we shot, I know I wrote that direction, but I'm shooting at it as you're looking at it is how I shot at it, using these dots as a point of aim. And so pretty much I just loaded up some 3-shot groups. I know everyone hates 3-shot groups, but I just wanted to load up, you know, a few 3-shot groups to test the overall length theory. You know, if I start making adjustments to overall length, will I actually see a difference in on-target performance? So these are loaded at 16 grains, which was the max charge according to Western Powder's load guide for that bullet. So 2.1, and then I'll jump 20 thousandths each time. So 2.1 was, you know, fairly tight again for a 3-shot group. You know, take that with a grain of salt. But then it opened up, if we lengthened it by 20 thousandths, 40 thousandths, still not that great. But then it tightened back up at 2.16, started to tighten back up. And then this last one was just 2 shots. If I stacked them in there on top of each other, I was going to explore that a little more, but I only had 2 more. And so I just, whatever, that one doesn't even count. So I came back with that information, after the initial velocity testing, came back with that information. Okay, so now let me load up 2 5-shot groups with 16 grains at these overall lengths, right? The 2 that perform the best in my 3-shot test, and see how that translates into 5-shot groups. So that's our 5-shot groups, all right, at 2.1, 2.16, all right, on the overall length. Now, I can hit the woods with 1.5 inch load. Doesn't bother me a bit. Ideally, our criteria, we'd like to keep it sub MOA at 100, or just sub MOA in general. So we'd like to keep it 1 inch or less. Obviously, I want the groups to be as tight as possible because I'm not always the one pulling the trigger on this rifle. So it's going to be my wife. It's going to be, one of our daughters that might be pulling the trigger on this. They don't have as much time behind a rifle as I do. They don't have as much practice shooting and all that. So I just don't want, if I can eliminate some of that error by having a really tight group, then that'll kind of help ease my mind in terms of when we get out there in the field and your adrenaline's pumping and they take a shot, I can have good confidence in the load, knowing that, hey, that's a really good load. So if you put it close to where you're telling me you put it, hey, you're good to go. I mean, that's a dead deer. So I wanted to explore the 2.16 overall length because that would allow me to maybe bump up our powder charge a little bit, which is what I did for the next test. So there's our 5-shot group results, slightly better on the 2.16. So that's what we rolled with for the very next test. Oh, all right. And so I did a follow-up. I did 2.16 at the previous test, right, charge of 16 grains. And then I also increased our powder charge by 0.5 grain since we lengthened our overall length. So we went to 2.160, added a 0.5 grain. This is a 0.5 grain of powder over the max charge, and our group really tightened up, 0.634. So that's exactly what I wanted to see. Our velocity numbers are at 2,050 feet per second. So we gained a little bit of velocity from the initial, load. We were at 2033. Now we're at 2050. With that 0.5 grain increase, now we're averaging 2050. And so, we were able to squeeze out a little more velocity due to that overall length and adding just a little bit more powder. And no issues in terms of pressure, nothing. Everything shot exactly the same, just as normal, no problems there. So I was super excited to see those results, that 5-shot group come in at 0.634. So knowing that, and that was the load we're going to go with, I loaded up a bunch of rounds. Like I said, replace the scope. Okay, well, now I got to go zero the scope. That's where this target came into play. That first shot, that was simply me getting on target down at the bottom left, and I made my scope adjustment up and to the right, and that's where, and then I fired that 3-shot group, and that's it. So I would say we're zeroed, we're dialed in. I couldn't be happier. This has probably been, no joke, the easiest load development that I've done. Other than the 160 grain round nose for the 6.5 Creedmoor. That's a ridiculous round that just, for whatever reason, shoots amazing out of my rifle. But in terms of front end to back end velocity, you know, and then tweaking overall length, and just everything happened exactly as it was supposed to, or as you would hope, to come up with a really good load for this rifle. So that's where we sit. This is the hunting configuration. That's the load we're going with, 16.5 grains of Ramshot Enforcer, pushing the Barnes 130 grain tip TSX. So that's the update. Hopefully I can do a follow-up video with here's, you know, real world, you know, in-field performance, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it will perform exactly as the load development has gone really well. So that's kind of the hope. So that's it. That's the update. So hope you guys have a good one, and we'll catch y'all next time.